What's going on, everybody? Gar Hoover here, and today we're going to be looking at my track Leisure, which I made on the PO-33. Now, Leisure, it is a house track. It uses fake sidechain and some awesome fake delay, all done on the PO-33 and sampling techniques. And if you want the samples, you can download them below. If you have yet to hear the full-length track for Leisure, you can check it out up here. And with that being said, let's break down how I made my track Leisure. Alright, so as always, we're going to just start with the samples that are featured within Leisure. First off, this is the original key sound that I played. It's just, I think it's a minor 7 chord or something like that. But I ended up not using it, even though it's featured still on my pocket operator. What I did was, in my DAW, I had the volume fade in quickly, imitating like sidechain, and this is the result. So you get that kind of fade in, but as you know from the song, I'm actually doing it further pitched down. So it gets that fun, fading, classic feel to it that's similar with house music or whatever else when you want that side chain feel. Next up, we have the bass, which pretty simple. Once again, just a simple pluck. Then we got this kind of almost brassy, saw, filtered sound I made, and then we got that kind of, it's a fifth, I believe. I had tuned one of the oscillators on a synth to a fifth, and then kind of just made it a simple pluck, and that's what you hear during the chorus when that kicks in. So that's going to do it for the samples that are melodic. Now we got our drums, very simple as well. And that's going to do it. The pocket operator kind of chopped them up. So if you record the samples as they're played out in the sample pack into your pocket operator and just hold down record and record them all into a drum bank, it'll chop them up into something similar to this so that you can just play them out really easily all within one drum bank. So that is going to do it for the samples. Alright, so very simple. Let's just start with the intro to the track. That's all it is. Super simple. Once again, because it's house, we're at, I believe this was recorded, 120. Just because I keep it at the standard house preset. Pretty boring like that. But with house music, when you have it around 120 or anything like that, you're just going to want to put the kicks all in that first vertical row going down. And it's just going to be those solid kicks. Nothing on them, no layering to them, like I always layer my samples as you guys heard in the sample pack. And then, what's the other thing? We've got just the chords playing out. And those are each in sync with the kick so that it imitates that side chain. So that's all the intro is. Now let's just take a listen to the verse. Alright, so now let's take a look at that verse track, or just those two patterns, this first two. So what we've got going on here, once again, the house chords staying the exact same nearly the entire song, nothing new there. The drum groove does change up a bit, so once again though, we've got the kick going with the hi-hat layered on top, and then we've got a kick with the kind of side of the snare getting hit. I'm trying to remember what that's called, rim shot. And then another kick. So if you're doing a house rhythm, once again, you're going to put the clap or the snare or the rim shot on 5 and 13 and the rest of the kicks on 1 and 9. And that's just going to keep that steady hit in that groove. And then we have this hi-hat that's on the offbeat here, which is the third vertical row that kind of adds that bounce to it. And then another one of those snare hits that's on an offbeat as well that kind of adds that kind of groove. You can hear it there with that rim shot, and it sounds really good. I think I have it on swing set to 1 or 2. It's nothing too intense, but it's still there. And then if we go to the second rhythm, it's the same exact drum pattern. So nothing new here, same stuff. But as you guys can tell, we now have a bass line going on. So the bass line is pretty darn bouncy. And what makes it feel so bouncy and great for house and having that kind of groove to it is that it's on the offbeat. So it's not staying with the kick as much. It's bouncing around on notes other than the kick. So a key one is always this third vertical column is how you're going to get that offbeat groove. And then you kind of have it bouncing up here from... So it goes up an octave and then back down. So octave jumps are crucial for good bass lines, and then I'm not going to break it down too much, but then you always want to kind of bring it back to landing on a kick every now and then just to kind of ground it. So you can feel how it's offbeat and bouncy for this one, and then the second pattern, it kind of grounds itself pretty nicely. And then it bounces again on the second half of that second pattern. So that's the first half of the pattern. Yep. So now we have that second sound that's added in on the second half of the verse that kind of adds a little more intrigue. Once again, it's just a simple synth sound. It's just this. But what makes it interesting is it has a fake delay on it. And so it doesn't have a built-in delay. You guys have heard the sample. That's all it is. What I did was I had it sync up with these following notes. So I'm going to kind of break this down for you. So I have the one note playing on the third step, and then, so that's all it is. That's all I'm doing. That's all it could be, but then I imitate the fake delay. So how to get a delay that feels like it's synced with the rest of the delays in the rhythms that are taking place, you can see here every 1, 2, and then I place 1, 1, 2, place 1, 1, 2, place 1, 1, 2, place 1. So that's how we're going to get that delay that when we think about that first note, which was, and then it jumps up, right? And then so the second note, when it plays 1, 2, place 1, right? 1, 2, place 1, 1, 2, place 1. And so what I did was I played those first 2 notes, plugged them in, and then the following notes, I lowered the volume of each note, and you'll hear that as I click each one, and lowered the filter. And so this is a tedious process, but it creates this awesome delay as this note fades out. So all I did was you sync it up, so you pick out all of the notes you want, and then you hold down the note, and then you're going to adjust the volume and reduce the volume, and you're going to reduce the filter and bring a low-pass filter onto it so it quiets down the higher end of the sample, and it feels like it's fading off into just essentially darkness. And you can hear for that second one, that's what I did, but let me bring it up to brightness. That's the best part about the Pocket Operator. When you hold down a note, it recalls whatever that delay or whatever settings you had, the volume and the filter. So now when I play out notes, it's just as quiet and the high end is rolled off. But when I click a different note and hold it down, it recalls it again. So that's really cool. It's a great way to create these fun delays and rhythms. And we'll see that play out once again as we get to the build, which we're going to take a look at next. All right, so for the build, it's pretty simple. Everything cuts out for the most part, but I'm going to just play it for you. That's all it is, and then it drops into the chorus. So it's kind of not really a build. It's it's a removal of sounds, but it helps us know that there's going to be some type of transition that's going to be taking place. So let's take a look at that. Obviously, we have the drums cut out, except we have a fake delay on that drum. I'm not even going to look at this because the sidechained piano, because that just continues on throughout the whole song once again. So that's just unspoken, that's carrying on. But the drums, another fake delay going on here. We have that sound, and then the rest of these, I didn't want the kick to carry on, so I have the kick with the hi-hat, open hi-hat, and then I found my open hi-hat down here without the kick that I created, and then had that repeat. And so this is a little bit faster delay than the other one that we used because it's one place, one place, one place, one place. But then I did the same thing where you can hear, in comparison to this note, you can barely hear it. It's quiet. It is rolled off all of the high ends, so that creates that fake delay. And it's subtle, but it creates that just nice crash effect when you don't really have the audio to make a standard crash sound or something. It can create some fun texture and create some kind of fade out that helps with transition. So that's what's going on with the drums. And then the rest of the stuff is the same little synth line. So nothing new there. It's just I copy paste it, but it showcases the cool delay effects that I have at play. And so that's going to do it for the build / removal of the rest of the parts of the verse. All right, time for the first portion of the chorus, which is taking place on this row right here. And so I've already sequenced it out. I'll just show you the sequencing actually, because it is kind of interesting how I played this out. So we've got it first triggered right here, and then it goes here, and it goes back to the first portion, the first pattern, and then to the third pattern. And then it goes back to the first, to the second, to the first, to the fourth pattern here. That's part of the chorus. So these two are the final portion of the chord progression, but one serves to loop back around to the chorus, and the other serves to loop into a different portion, which we'll hear when I hit play. Alright, so there you go. You can hear it all play out. So it kind of, I take 4 patterns and kind of make it into this full chorus, you know. So starting off, the chords, same exact thing. Don't even need to talk about those. Next up, let's go to the drums. The drums pick up here, which is kind of fun. So we have that nice loud step or kick with that hi-hat on it. And that kind of is pronounced. That's at the start of most of these patterns. The drums stay pretty similar pattern to pattern, so I might not need to cover too much. But you see that that's that. And then we've got this nice deep snare that's a normal natural snare that I layered with a tambourine for additional kind of percussive elements. And then this kick is just a clean kick. No other percussive elements to it, so it kind of stands out in the mix nicely. And then we've got that nice open hi-hat without any layering to it. And then these quieter hi-hats here that kind of add this almost gallop after the hi-hat, which we'll hear when I just play it out. So pretty simple stuff there. That kick, the snare here obviously has a kick included in it, so it keeps that driving feel to it. I'm pretty sure drums are exact same here, but in the third pattern and the fourth pattern, we kind of have a little bit of a difference. So what we add at the end are these 2 percussive hits, and that's all it is. It's very simple, but those 2 hits kind of serve. Even though the hi-hat gets cut out because I can only play one sound at a time, it still adds momentum and energy to it. So when I loop it, So it's got that fun feel to it. And I believe it's the same thing for this pattern. However, for this one, you can hear that there is some manipulation of the filter going on. So I'm just going to explain it here for this with the drums. It applies to most of the sounds other than the plucked part. And what I'm doing is I'm holding down right as this is playing in. You can't do it during edit mode. You have to do it while it's in play mode. And you hit play, and you're going to hold down right and make sure you have the filter selected. And then what I did was I hold down right and I turn the filter to the right, and it creates the high pass effect. So it's removing the low end, and I have the resonance up, so it creates this fun sweep that takes place across the entire pattern. So it feels like it's slowly getting sucked out of it, all of that low end energy. So when the low end comes back, it hits harder than it normally would. So that's it for the drums for this portion. The other standout part, let's just go. The bass stays pretty similar as well. You'll see it. We just added a few additional notes to try and add some more energy rather than just having it feel like exactly like the verse. But you can see we still have that offbeat feel to it. And here even, you have a few notes that kind of... So it kind of has a similar feel to... So it's not... This gets a little bit bouncier in the second pattern and a little more high-pitched. There's some additional notes that add a little more color to it that make the bass line stand out more. But you have the same bass line essentially for the second pattern, because what this really is just the same as these two patterns up here, which is the same as these two and these two. It's the same chord progression that stretches across two patterns, but I wanted to make the second pattern different 3 different times for this chorus, just so when it loops around, it adds intrigue. You'll hear this right here. So you have these additional bass notes going. So what that's doing is it's an arpeggiating bass line. So it's going up the chord that is being played out. But you can't really hear it too much, but it still adds that energy. And it's the same thing pretty much for this one, but once again, I'm removing that the low end with a high pass filter to it. So it sounds really good. Finally, we've got this pluck sound going on here, which we can take a look at, which, as you can see, not too complicated. It's only on the first vertical row and this third vertical row, so it's staying pretty straight. So eighth notes are what we're looking at here. So when you first hear it, it's this very straight rhythm. But when you get to the second pattern, they kind of go off the grid a little bit, off that eighth note hit, and then kind of it shifts, and you can feel the delay a little bit differently. So what we've got going on here, the delay is pretty simple. So because each note comes back around, so what you're going to hear is just one clean note, because all these are clean notes that are following the kick, but then the following note is quieter and the high end's rolled off again. So it's a fake delay that's taking place. And then you go one skip, one skip, one skip, one skip to imitate that. And that's the same thing here. We've got the one, skip, one, and then it skip. But then we have the second hit, rather than coming at the kick, it hits early, and it creates this offbeat feel, because then this is now the other delayed hit and note. And then you have another clean note here. Listen. So you get that fun feel to it. And then for this second alternate pattern, sounds confusing. So for the second pattern, when we have the first alternate, that's how I should have said it, you get a higher note. Excuse me. Right there. It's a higher note. So it adds a little bit variation. And then the same thing here. So it's that delayed effect again, but this time I just wanted this to stand out once again because the delay is so cool on this that I didn't want to remove the high end because I was creating the fake delay, which actually does the opposite. I'm using the low pass filter to create the delay, so I couldn't do the high pass trick for this effect. So it actually helps this synth stand out though on this final pattern. And that's going to do it for the first portion of the chorus. All right, so the final portion of the chorus, kind of the outro, if you want to call it that, let me sequence it out because it's the same chord progression, but instead of having it just play through regularly, I have it repeat 3 times and then it plays the final portion of the chord progression. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. And that's how I'm going to play it out for you. So once again, this is pretty simple. I'm not even going to look at the chords. As I've mentioned, they're repeating themselves, but instead of having it go to the other chord progression, it just loops, and then it goes to it later on. So that's that. The drums are a little different. They've got a little more energy. Got that same kick, though. And then you've got the snare the same. Same kick here without a hi-hat or anything. Same open hats. But we now have the closed hats on every single one. So it's got that gallop feel that's even more pronounced. And then for this one, you can hear we've got the drums going. But you might also hear another hi-hat that's going on here. And that is coming from this pattern, or the second instance of drums. I copied the drums and brought them down here, and I made this other hi-hat that has a little bit of the high end rolled off, or the low end. I'm not sure which one it was. It's filtered, and I believe I pitched it down a little bit, so it's a little more trashy sounding. So it has this fun feel to it. So when it loops around this first pattern, you really feel that loop because this hi-hat comes crashing through every time. So you feel that, but then for when you go to this pattern, the second one, that hi-hat's not there, so you feel it and you're like, oh wait, this shifted, it changed. And so it's that intrigue that's taking place. But once again, you got the kicks that are just driving, and then the hi-hats on this third vertical row, and then you got those closed hi-hats that kind of close up the hi-hat nicely and give it that cool feel. So those are the drums for that first portion. The second portion, they're pretty simple too. So I have that hi-hat going again on this because it's just pretty much the same pattern. Just the drums change and there's no bass line because it's kind of the outro. So the drums are a little more simple. There's no hi-hats or anything. The kick is just all we've got left with the snare. So it's super easy. Really, really simple, really fun though. Gives it that good feel. So, as you can probably hear, the most standout thing, well, let's just go to the bass. The bass is super simple for this one. It's all offbeats because I wanted the bass not to stand out because I was doing this other cool effect with the other synth. So it's all on the offbeat in sync with that open hi-hat. And that's just playing the bass note of each one of the chords. So the one of each one of the chords that I'm playing. Very simple. It's just driving. It's chugging along. Does a great job. And then for these last two, there's no bass. So that makes it even easier. But let's talk about what's going on here. This arpeggiating riff is really cool. It sounds great. But then it's taken to another level because I'm doing fake sidechain with it. So each one of these notes obviously is part of the chord that's being played, which is a minor seventh. So it's following the same chords, the same notes that are within the chord that's just surging in the background with that sidechain, that electric piano. But what I'm doing, as we've noticed with other things with the delay, it's the opposite this time. It's very quiet. I've rolled off all of the high end with the filter, and then the second note is a little brighter. Third note, a little bit brighter. And then the fourth note, and then it is the brightest, which is pretty much without the filter, and then it goes back to the next one, and then it goes again and again. How did I record that in? I didn't. I had to program it in. So what I did was I knew what the first note was going to be, so I put it at the lowest setting that I wanted, and then I just picked those notes out with the rolled off high end with the filter on, and then I brought it up a little bit more and then punched those ones in, rolled it up a little more, punched those ones in for this third row, and then turned it off and did the final notes that make up the chord. So that's what's going on with that surging, awesome sidechain effect. I hope that that really is helpful for you guys in kind of being a little more creative with the pocket operator and trying to do some fun workarounds, whether that's the fake sidechain or the fake delay. I'm having a lot of fun with trying to push the pocket operator to its limits, and hopefully this helps you all also do that. So with that being said, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. As always, if you're interested in more tutorials, I've got them available somewhere on the screen right now. Or if you want to check out our pocket operators videos, I've got those on the screen as well. Or if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I would love to have additional support. It helps my channel. It helps me keep going and wanting to do this because these tutorials take a little bit more time to record. But I know that you guys really enjoy them, and so that makes it worth my time. So as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. I will see you guys in the next one.